Hello fellow members of the Midnight Society, welcome back to another episode review from the show Are You Afraid of the Dark? Last time we covered The Tale of the Quiet Librarian, a Kiki story about two teens who encounter a sinister librarian who steals children's voices. Tonight's narrative, from Betty Ann, is about two cousins who discover a scarecrow that can do one's bidding. But at what cost? Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, I call this Season 4, Episode 7, The Tale of the Silent Servant. We open on Frank and Kiki arriving in a huff, angry at Betty Ann for not letting them sneak into a movie. Ah, I see. So this story's going to focus on peer pressure, eh?
I really thought it was wrong, so I had a choice. Should I stand up for what's right, or stay silent?
I know that Betty Ann is making a serious point about standing up for what she believes is right, but I can't focus on that because her bedazzled gold vest is blinding me. Now, to be fair, 13-year-old me wouldn't have had the same issues with that vest that I do. In fact, he probably would have thought it paled in comparison to the sparkle of Betty Ann's eyes, like two stars that fell to earth yet remained brilliant as though they still pierced the infinite sky of night. But that nerd had a big crush on Betty Ann, so his opinion doesn't matter. That vest is gaudy.
You're kidding.
Betty Ann starts the preamble to her story by saying that silence can be a blessing, but it can also be evil. Silence? Wait, didn't we just do an episode about silence with the Quiet Librarian? Y'all need to stop reading each other's diaries. Like Tucker did a story about a sea curse, and the next week Gary and Frank did a story about a pirate's curse, which involves the sea, right? And now back-to-back episodes involving silence? Look, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, Betty Ann, since you're my favorite storyteller, but if I even get a whiff of a library, I'm out.
It's sensitive.
The tale begins on a farm at night. One man enters a barn to find another man passed out while holding on to an odd-looking object shaped sort of like a bone. The man takes the object from the unconscious person, resulting in...
Canovector solemnos. The words don't work.
Bro, that's because you're saying it wrong. I mean, I don't know why I have to keep covering this on here. Klatu berada... Ash, help me out here.
Necktie. Nectar. Nickel. Definitely an N-word.
A wooden door starts rattling, and the man tells whatever is inside that he told it to never reveal itself. He then throws the bone-looking object inside with it and locks the door. The door starts rattling again, resulting in...
I command you, be still.
Betty Ann, if this guy's keeping a sex slave in his barn, that's a little dark for kids programming. I don't care what time this thing aired on Snick. I mean, what's next? Straight up murder?
I'll return for you later, after I take care of our friend George.
Okay, someone should really get Betty Ann some help.
I'm not so sure about that.
20 years later, we meet our two main characters, Jared and his cousin Ann. Jared is staying at Ann's farm for the summer and forcing her to play baseball, which she is not really into. And look, I get it, Ann. Given the choice, unless it's watching The Sandlot, I'd rather be shoveling pig shit than being subjected to baseball too. Now, if you want to talk hockey, that's a different story. Although, when the only pucks you're going to find on a farm, you really don't want to be playing hockey with. Anne wants to stop playing, but Jared insists that she go out for a long one. When she protests, he bullies her into it by saying,
Do it!
He keeps telling her to go farther and farther back until... Two things. Number one, there is no way the baseball Nazi here can throw that far. And two, if I were Anne, when he said keep going, I would have just gone right into the house because f*** that guy. Anyway, she doesn't do that, of course, resulting in... No. Look, I don't know who this guy is, but ain't no farmer wearing a tucked-in white t-shirt and the derpiest hat in Canada. Anyway, this is Anne's dad, and before he can even speak, Jared pipes up with...
Told her not to go back so far.
There's too much work to be doing right now for you to be causing trouble, young lady.
He's right there, Anne. You could pop him in the nuts with that baseball glove and say it was an accident. He'll never give you shit again. You know you want to. In fact, I think you should.
Just do it!
Anne's dad, Pete, punishes both kids by telling them they have to work off the price of a new window. He then instructs his oldest son, Mark, to take their gloves. Wait, Is that Dale from Tucker and Dale versus Evil? Wow. I mean, actually, it's a little insensitive. I mean, not all farmers grow up to be hillbillies. Anyway, the kids' first task is to take some beans to another farm down the road. Jared says that it isn't fair, to which Uncle Pete replies,
Breaking my window wasn't fair.
okay, I still hate the way this man is dressed, but I like his moxie. The kids ride towards the other farm, but they get sidetracked, and what was the reason again? Was it Anne gets a flat tire? No, it was, Jared sees some baseball-related stuff. No. The kids get into an argument about the window and go their separate ways. No. What was it? Oh, yeah.
Cool barn. Let's check it out.
What? Cool barn? Let's go check it out. Look, I get that the kid's bored, and we don't really know much about Jared, but from the little that we do know, there's no part of me that believes he would find a dilapidated barn cool and want to go poke around inside. He'd want to just complete his tasks and get his baseball privileges back. Anyway, Jared finds a gravestone next to the barn, to which Anne gives him and us a bit of backstory.
It's Mr. Olsted's. People say that he was some kind of sorcerer and that he had invisible servants work his farm.
Anne, I'm pretty sure you left out the part where he was a deranged murderer. It's probably fine. Hey, what's in the barn?
We can make a dugout for our baseball field with these boards.
What? You rode here on bikes. What is your plan exactly? Dismantle the barn piece by piece and ride the wood back in Anne's little basket? I feel like we're doing a lot of reaching to get these kids to discover whatever it was the guy from the opening is hiding in the barn. Apparently he was keeping a scarecrow locked up. Well, you know that thing's coming to life eventually. Anyway, the scarecrow gives Jared an idea. A very stupid idea.
We could hang the scarecrow in the garden instead of building a fence. Scarecrows, not deer.
Yeah, and aside from Anne's very valid point, do you think that's how adults operate? I know you wanted me to build a fence around the garden as part of my punishment for breaking the window, but here's a scarecrow that I stole from an old barn, so we're cool, right? Where's my glove? Anne finds the weird bone-looking object from the beginning of the tale and puts it in her pocket, and then somehow the kids manage to get the giant scarecrow, the one that they're having trouble just barely moving off the ground, back to their farm on their bikes. Putting aside the fact that that thing's face is clearly made from human skin, I think y'all need to sue the Jeepers Creepers franchise for stealing your look. Anyway, Mark shows up asking about the scarecrow. Jared says that it's to keep the deer away, and then Mark brings up my very point.
Nice try. You still gotta help me build the fence.
It is then revealed to Mark that the kids never delivered the beans they were tasked with, so he sends them back. Anne conveniently took the beans with her into the barn, so they go back there and find...
I used to see rainbow-colored lights. Now, darkness.
Kids, adults, adult kids, this is why you don't do drugs, okay? Just look at this guy. He was once a respectable crazy person, and now he's going to take those rantings seriously. I don't even know what drugs he's on. Probably all of them, okay? I mean, I guess the good news is he wasn't murdered 20 years ago, but that really only leaves me with more questions that probably won't be answered by the end of the episode. So, anyway, Crazy Train gives some cryptic clues about the silent servant in a scene that goes on way too long before we transition back to the kids' room where Jared asks who that was.
Crazy George. He was Mr. Olsted's foreman until he went crazy, probably.
Hey, you don't know that. Maybe Crazy George was born crazy, which is why his mama called him Crazy George. Anyway, Anne remembers the weird object she found in the barn. Jared manages to open it and finds a parchment inside. Now, Jared is no stranger to horror movies and decides to put that scroll back where they found it without giving it a second glance. Every time. Oh, no! He's taken too many baseballs to the head. Not only does he read it, he reads it out loud, which is always key to starting some shit.
And you believe that stuff?
Later, the kids are tasked with taking out the garbage. While they're walking, Anne asks if Jared believes any of the silent servant stuff, and he says that he wishes because he's tired of doing chores, resulting in... The kids run into Mark as they flee. He asks what's going on, and they tell him, but when they go to show him, the scarecrow is just lying on the ground. Mark says that their dad probably moved it out of the garden and it fell. You know, When we first met Mark, I thought he was going to be one of those jerky older siblings, but he actually won me over right here.
You guys want me to help you hang it back up?
I mean, sure, Jared's still a little twat, but at least Farmer Tucked Shirt has some good kids. Jared throws a tantrum as expected, kicking the scarecrow and telling him to fix the window and deliver the beans. Wait, you two still didn't deliver the f***ing beans? You went over that way twice! Now how is that guy supposed to grow a giant beanstalk?
Such sorrow.
The next day, the kids find the window fixed and the beans delivered. Anne believes it was the scarecrow, but Jared is skeptical. He decides to test it and commands the scarecrow to finish the fence they've been working on. Anne tells him to take it back, citing,
You heard what George said. It's evil.
I'm sorry, this George?
Power was between the dragons.
You want to take advice from this George.
The dragons have been stolen. Have you seen my dragons?
I'm starting to lose faith in you, Anne. Later that night, we see Anne review the scroll before looking out over what appears to be the completed fence, but the next day, Anne is surprised when Mark reveals the fence is finished. Now, we didn't get a full view of the fence from Anne's window, but when we last saw it during the day, the fence was only around half done, and from what we could see from her window, it was well more finished than that. Anyway, overjoyed at the prospect of having a magical slave, Jared prepares to give the scarecrow another command.
Don't ask anything. It's evil.
Why do you keep saying that? It's an entity bound and compelled to serve by magic, which means it has no free will of its own. How does that make it evil? It hasn't done anything to make you think it's evil, and the one source claiming that it's evil is this guy.
Only the master could break the spell. But he's dead.
Anyway, Jared commands it to make him a dugout, which it does, but I'm going to assume that just like me, the rest of you were ahead of Jared on this one when you saw the color of the wood.
You guys want to explain this?
Anne's gonna blame the scarecrow, but that's on Jared. He just said make him a dugout. He didn't say where to get the wood from. Mark grounds the kids and returns what he believes to be their baseball gloves before heading off to his softball game. Later, Jared checks the bag to discover the baseball gloves are not in there, and he reacts like any baseball Nazi would.
I'd like to kill whoever did.
Jared realizes his folly too late, and they believe the scarecrow has gone off to kill Mark. The kids think that if they smash the tube the scroll was in, that it will stop the scarecrow. And since the stakes are so high, they give it the old college try. Okay, so they give it the old community college try. Online community college try?
Okay then.
The kids rush off to warn Mark, only to realize that he isn't the target. His dad is, because he has the baseball gloves on his tractor. Anne says they need to get to the tombstone, but Jared thinks they need to go look for Pete. Anne finally stands up for herself and insists they go to the tombstone by saying,
Just do it!
What? 3 Shias in one episode? That's what we in the business like to call a try-a-LaBuff. That's a try-a-LaBuff. Oh, do you get it? Because it sounds like shy. Sorry. Mark takes the kids to the tombstone, but they are running out of time. With the scarecrow slowly sneaking up on Pete, the kids only have like 3 or 4 hours to save him. Seriously, this thing moves so slow that I have a hard time believing it accomplished any of the other tasks in a timely fashion. Anyway, Anne breaks the tube over the tombstone, recites the words, and then we get a weird flash cut recap of the entire episode before the scarecrow appears in front of her and then dissolves into a pile of clothing, presumably leaving behind the scent of fresh cut grass.
Open up the bag. Smell that? It's fresh cut grass.
Mark wants to know what is going on, and Anne says that she'll tell him tomorrow, while Jared fixes the fence. Looks like Anne's in charge now, Jared. No more baseball, bitch. Sorry, I shouldn't call a preteen a bitch, but he was being one the entire episode. Anyway, the tale ends with... Yep, because the scarecrow slave was the evil one, right, Anne? I think I hate both of these kids.
This isn't fair.
The episode ends with Frank and Kiki apologizing to Betty Ann and offering to take her to a movie, and they are buying. Of course, Frank does have certain other stipulations.
Except I picked the flick.
Now for the review. This episode was definitely a mixed bag. I think the acting was fine and the monster makeup was terrific, but the lore was hard to follow and the plot was meh. In fact, it was really just the monkey's paw. Sorry, the twisted claw all over again. Only in this situation there's a physical creature carrying out the poorly worded wishes of the object owner. Also, I know there's a Goosebumps episode that is similar to this, but I didn't have time to check it out for any comparisons this time around, so sorry.
Ooh, win for what?
The settings had real potential. A haunted barn? Are you kidding me? But we barely spend any time in the barn, and what little we did had some very tight camera angles. Also, to me, this episode really wasted one of the biggest and scariest tropes that exist on a farm. Tall crops. And you can't tell me they don't have that in Canada, because there's a ton of it near the end of the episode that doesn't get utilized.
I know, I'm sorry.
The story was fine, and I don't want to beat a dead horse since I say this a lot about this show, but the lore was really hurt by the runtime. And I found a lot of things confusing. The opening implied that George was going to be killed, but then 20 years later, he was fine. Unless he was supposed to be a ghost, but he had a physical presence. So, did he turn the tables on Earlstead and kill him? And what's up with the silent servant? The only lore we get is delivered by George, who is just chewing scenery, and that is mostly to give hints on how to defeat the thing, and the kids don't even take that information in correctly, right? George says that Earlstead is evil. But Anne takes that to mean that the servant is evil, and we don't really get a reason why. The story needed a non-crazy character to recall some exposition about Earlstead or the servant, maybe somebody who could have been alive 20 years ago, perhaps as a child. Someone like, I don't know, a farmer who tucks in their teas.
Exactly.
The scares were, which is a shame because I think it's one of the creepiest makeups that they've done. I mean, the Scarecrow had some real Michael Myers / Leatherface vibes going on, but it moves so slow that other than a couple of jump scares, it never really presents a threat. The episode really needed a chase through the tall crops, something where the monster could move fast but we don't necessarily see a lot of it for that extra scare factor. Younger me wouldn't have found this episode scary, unless you count Scared Straight, because the heck with the DARE program, George was all I needed to ensure I stayed off of drugs.
The better for you then.
The acting in this episode was good. Anne was solid as the timid kid who doesn't stand up for herself until she finally takes charge. Jared was good as the Beth stand-in for the episode, although he never reaches her heights of douchery.
Don't touch my stuff.
Mark was fine as the kind yet oblivious older brother, and, was I really acting on his part or just him? It's not like he has a huge body of work after this to draw from to figure it out, so the world may never know.
Going camping?
The adult acting in the episode was also decent. While I hated Pete's wardrobe, I thought he did a good job as the no-nonsense farm dad and wish we could have utilized him more in the episode. George. Oh, George. George was extra. It's not often that I say a villain character is too over the top, but he was. He was, yeah. He was effective, don't get me wrong. Any kid watching this would have been definitely creeped out by him, but as an adult, I just see crackhead with stranger danger vibes written all over him.
He made me this way!
Betty Ann, I'm glad you stood up for yourself against Frank and Kiki, but for me, the tale of the silent servant doesn't meet the approval of the Midnight Society. The Midnight Society members poll on this one wasn't as one-sided as it usually is. At the time of recording this video, it was 87% in favor of, with me falling into the 13% against camp. So, I'm being overruled. Way to have your silent servant choke out the opposition, Betty Ann.
The trick is to know when to welcome it, or be very afraid.
I want to thank the following Midnight Society members for participating in this video's poll.
The dragons! I have the dragons!
Oh, shit. It's crazy, George. I'm out. Names are on the screen.
I see. I see the rainbow-colored lights. They look like hearts, stars, horseshoes, clovers, and blue moons. Silly rabbit, trickster, cuckoo for Cuckoo Puffs. I summon the silent servant to do my bidding.
What the hell?
Hey, you're supposed to be silent.
Bite me!
Hey, get back here. But I have the dragons.
What did you all think of Betty Ann's story? Did you see it as a kid? What would you make the silent servant do for you? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to check out the next episode on the tale of the room for rent. Until then, are you afraid of the dark?
I used to see rainbow-colored lights.
Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and a share. It really goes a long way to helping out the channel. Be sure to subscribe and click that bell icon to be notified when more Midnight Society episodes go up. Thanks, everybody.